First of all, congratulations on the Fever and the great season you guys have had.
Thanks. It's great to be back. We lived here for 20 years. Larry and I go way back to our Pentagon days.
Yeah.
But it is an exciting moment, and we're going to turn it into a movement.
Yeah, well, it feels like that's happening, right? I mean, it just feels, we were talking at our table about just how women's sports is just taken off.
Yeah, it's, I think we were talking about, I'm so glad to be here. Yesterday I was in Texas speaking at the Sports Business Journal, and I've been in this job for 6 seasons. 4 of them have been really awful. And I used to have to try to manufacture invitations to try to share the story about women in sports. Sheila, you feel the pain, right? Just, we would hijack other people's events just to try and get a word in for women's sports. And now opportunities are coming, and we're excited. It's, it's time. Title IX's over 50 years old, and so it's taken a long time to get to this moment. But we embrace it. We've had to change our mentality and our scope, and our focus has been 180 out.
So we've got an early morning event here. You probably were here last night.
Right.
I'm guessing if we did this thing 3 years ago, the hotel you stayed at would be a different hotel than where you stayed last night.
If we did this 3 years ago, you wouldn't have invited me.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You got me there.
I knew you 3 years ago.
You got me there, but probably there'd been a Motel 6 somewhere that you'd have driven in from, as opposed to wherever upstairs maybe.
Well, we wouldn't have flown in on charter flights, first of all, and we would not be at the nicer hotels, which our athletes deserve. But it's a business model.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we're going to talk. I would like to talk. So you mentioned the Pentagon. You and I first got to know each other when we were working together in the Pentagon. I saw a great story when you were appointed president of the Fever, 2019. There was a great story, and it said from Saddam Hussein's palace to basketball in Indianapolis. Explain a little bit about sort of how you became the president of the Fever, and what in that same piece it talks about how you've had 8 careers, which is a great way to think about it. Gina, when she announced, you gave my background, sounded like I can't hold a job down, but you've made a career out of that.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about sort of how your journey, and I'll talk a little bit about the Pentagon stuff. But
sure. I've had this great opportunity. I was brought up in Indiana, Northwest Indiana, from parents who just believed that if you work hard, good things happen. And so I started off as a first grade school teacher. And from there, when I was teaching, my husband, a Notre Dame alum. I'm recruiting for Notre Dame.
Notre Dame.
Go
Irish.
Yes.
Right.
So he was a lawyer in Northwest Indiana. And the first Gulf War broke out. And my husband came home from work and said, I really want to serve the country. So we both quit our jobs, and he joined the Army. He probably couldn't get into the Navy.
Yeah, no, we have high standards.
Yeah, sure. And quotas, apparently.
Yeah, no, they needed a kid from Detroit.
Yes. So he joined the Army, and we didn't know anything about the military. And so he went and he met with a recruiter, and they said, we can ship you out on Saturday. He's like, I'm a practicing lawyer, I can't ship out. And so somebody said, somebody followed my husband to the parking lot, a recruiter, and said, you should be in the JAG Corps. We didn't know about that either. So he came home from the recruiting station with the pay scale, and we both looked at it and we're like, okay, you go serve the country, I will get a third job, and we'll try to make ends meet. Anyway, long story short, he got into the JAG, and they sent us, people said, well, you and your wife think about where do you want to be stationed? Anywhere in the world, give us your top 5 locations. Oh man, we were excited. We wrestled with that. There's Hawaii, there's Germany.
Paris is at
Oh my word, we couldn't believe, we love the Army. We're going to travel the world. So we put in our 5, after a lot of thought and strategy, we put in our 5 locations where we would love to be stationed, and we got sent to New Jersey. So in New Jersey, I volunteered for Linda's here. I volunteered for the Red Cross in New Jersey. I've been a Red Cross volunteer since I was 16.
Very nice.
And they asked me if I would move to DC and run a program, and that's how we ended up coming to DC and spent several years in Red Cross with Elizabeth Dole as president, doing some just really great, impactful work, and then was fortunate enough to get the call to come to the Pentagon and spent 7.5 years in the Bush administration.
Yeah, no, and you did a fantastic job. So you're, as we've learned now over the many years, and as I knew at the time, you're an expert at sort of getting people to understand the depth of what's really happening, quite apart from the noise around it. And it's sometimes sort of cast aside as branding, but it's so much more. And you created a real sense of what the military was doing after 9/11 and the importance of that. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you thought about that. And that got to the Saddam Hussein, and maybe you can talk about that too.
It's interesting, because when you said that, I thought about one time you and I were meeting, and I was coming up with some ideas, and you said, Allison, the difference between what you and I do, you said, Allison, you do the important, we're doing the urgent. Like the media is the urgent, but you're laying down the pathway for the important of the mission of the men and women in the military. And I think that was true. After 9/11, you know, it was, the phones just kept ringing. It was a wonderful moment. On 9/11, I was in a plane flying to Atlanta to meet with the ad agency. The whole purpose of that meeting was to ask the ad agency to come up with a recruitment campaign because we needed to encourage more people to serve in the military. So imagine we're sitting in the ad agency building. When we got there, they told us about the attacks. The head of the ad agency came into the conference room and said, don't worry, I have it. I made some phone calls, we're safe here. And I just remember, I mean, we're from the Pentagon, I kind of remember thinking, I don't know a lot, but I'm pretty sure people in Washington aren't calling the ad agency to be like, you're good. But he felt like we were good, so the pecking order I don't remember calling ad agencies. No offense, Carrie, but I just don't think that was happening that way. But anyway, we stayed there and rented a car and drove back the next night, got back to the Pentagon the next day. But what was amazing to me was there was this inflection point in our country. It was a scary and sad and terrible moment that had this lining of beauty in that we didn't need a campaign to invite people to join the military, because after 9/11, the lines were outside the door of recruiting centers. And it was just this moment of saying an inflection point like that changes human behavior. There's some of that still happening now in women's sports, not as critical or the dramatic, but still the inflection points matter. But after 9/11, my phone kept ringing from corporate leaders, individuals saying, what can we do to support the men and women in the military? We want to do more. And as you might remember, all of the lawyers at the Pentagon, no offense, kept saying, you can't do anything. We're the government, we can't do anything. And that felt unfulfilling. And so with the help of Susan Davis and her team at SDI, we created a campaign called America Supports You. And we just became this conduit of saying, all I knew was that it was wrong to say no to the goodwill of humans and Americans. And I thought, if we got this right, every day I thought about one thing: could we prevent Vietnam? Every day I got up and just thought, what would it take to prevent
Vietnam,
that sentiment?
meaning the reaction of the public to turn against the military in some way because of what was going on.
The attitude, and so there were different opinions about the war.
Right.
But how about if we find a way to give Americans a way to still support the military and their families? And so America Supports You became this overarching campaign of really laying that groundwork to say, let's connect some dots for people. The lawyers still hated it. You know, we paid the price for that.
I'm going to try and work the technology here a second. So that is America Supports You. So you remember. So talk about. So this was Washington D.C. These were on Labor Day weekend. I think in 4 or 5, 6 these parades. Talk about that a little bit.
The Freedom Walk. So it was.
Freedom Walk,
we were trying to raise visibility for the 9/11 Memorial, which is beautiful. If you haven't got it, I invite you to go. It's really beautiful at the Pentagon. We were trying to raise visibility, and somebody said, well, Allison, can you come up with some idea? And somebody that worked for us said they used to do Volksmarches in D.C. or in Germany, and could we do that? And so we got together, they went over and we talked to Susan and her team. It's like, what if we put together a walk that just invited people to come out and say, we support men and women in the military, first responders, and we called them Freedom Walks. And the challenge was, by the time the idea came together, we had 56 days to do it. And we had to get through 3 different governments, because Virginia, D.C., the Pentagon. And I remember we were walking down the street, I said to Susan, do you ever think it's just too hard? We briefed the mayor's office, and they had a million reasons why we couldn't do it. I said, do you ever think this is too hard? And Susan's like, no. And I'm like, all right, then we're doing it. Yeah. And thousands of people showed up for a Freedom Walk the first year, and then we did them in all 50 states and several countries around the world, because it was just a way to bring people together to say, we're not going to forget. And, you know, Secretary Rumsfeld was into it, and we did the one year we did the lights, the beams of lights, and I learned from you and Secretary Rumsfeld at that time, like, don't look at a problem in the smallest ways, look at a problem in the biggest way, because then you'll bring more creativity and energy to the solution. If you're only trying to find one myopic thing, everybody will tell you why you can't solve that. Yeah. You blow it up, make it bigger, and people will come along and help you. And that's what we do with the Freedom Walk.
It was remarkable. It really was. And it really did create a sense that, okay, this is going to be different. What we may or may not like what's going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, but we are going to stick by the military.
That's right.
It really did create
Cabinet secretaries walked. I mean, it was really quite amazing and powerful.
Yeah. And you spent a little time in Iraq. Just mention that. And you were saying you just saw Candi Rice in
We just hosted Candi at our economic club, and it was wonderful. And I took her to the fever practice because one of my players, Lexi Hall, has her bachelor's and master's in engineering from
Typical
Stanford.
pro basketball
Exactly.
player.
Yeah, all the time. Actually, all of our players have their bachelor's degrees, which is pretty amazing. And
Yep.
But actually, I have Larry to thank for my first trip to Iraq. We were in the Situation Room, and Dr. Rice, this is off the record, yes?
Yeah,
right?
no, yeah, this is like, it'll go nowhere.
Okay, good. Kind of like our careers.
Yep. For a period, that was kind of true, actually. Yeah, go ahead.
So we're in the Situation Room, and Dr. Rice wanted a press center set up in Iraq. You remember this? And she said,
Oh, yeah.
how long is it going to take? Because we were 3 news cycles behind every day. And so she said, we need a press center in Iraq. And she didn't really get energized exercise, but she was determined. And she kind of hit that table in the Situation Room. And she's like, what's it going to take to get that press center set up? And my favorite friend sitting to my left said, well, when I want something like that done, I give it to Allison. And I remember looking at you like, I do not want to go to Iraq. I am not that person. A lot of people wanted to check their box, like
go to
put
Iraq.
the stamp, like I went to Iraq. I was in Afghanistan. I'm like, I'm a first grade school teacher, and
From
I'm
New Jersey.
fine in here. So that got me my first trip to Iraq, and Larry and others like, don't worry, we'll send a team with you. And now, God bless my husband, he actually volunteered to deploy to Iraq. So he was doing God's work in Iraq, like with the troops, the whole thing. And I'm flying in these protected bubbles and, oh, we'll send people with you. And I said, okay, great. I get to the airport and I get a call from the people saying, oh no, they got detailed to the president to take him to NASCAR. And now I'm going to Iraq by myself. Yeah. So I get into Baghdad after a corkscrew landing into Iraq,
Those are
which is
exciting.
always fun. I get into Baghdad, there's no one there. There's a bus that says Green Zone, which is where my office is going to be at Saddam's palace. I get on the bus, I get to the Green Zone, I go walking in, and there's a colonel there, and I went over to him, I said, hi, I'm Allison Barber from the Pentagon. He said, ma'am, how did you get here? I said, well, I took the bus.
The Green Zone Express.
Yeah, and he said to me, and I quote, the suicide bus? I said, well, I can be certain that if it had said that instead of Green Zone, I wouldn't have taken that. I would have for sure, like just serious injury bus. I would take that one.
Well, obviously, that terrific sort of experience and all of that. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. But you did have basketball in your blood even while that was all going on. And I do want to kind of just start with this one. Mia, if you could run this, and you can just explain what this is. I think that's little Allison Barber.
Oh my gosh.
Is that going to run? Can you run that, Mia? I don't know if it'll play. Technology.
Oh, this is me getting my first basketball in my life.
Yay, look at that. That's fantastic. Yay, that's pretty good. So while you're in, that's very good. You almost got it going there.
I taught Caitlyn everything she knows.
Yeah. So while you're doing all the things at Pentagon, I mean, obviously basketball, tell us a little about your own basketball sort of journey.
Well, if you're from Indiana, the basketball is your game. And so my parents bought me my first basketball and hoop as a young child, and I played in my driveway. My dad used to always say to me, take it to the hoop, kid. This is just his voice in my head, meaning get closer to the basket and you might actually make it. But what he really gave me was a philosophy for my life of taking it to the hoop. Means you have a goal, you have drive, you're willing to take risk. You know, the closer you are to the basket, if you miss that shot, all of you would boo me. You would, if I miss a three-pointer, you'd be like, I can't make it either. But you're willing to take this risk to get fouled, and you also learn how to play on a team. So if you're in basketball and you're driving to the hoop, and you're going to be defended, you're looking for somebody else to pass the ball to. And so it really taught me this, just take it to the hoop mantra has really played out through all my careers.
Yeah. So basket, and it's true. And if you're in Indiana,
that's what we do.
Mr. Basketball, Miss Basketball. I mean, it's a big deal. No question about it.
Yeah.
But you obviously went back to Indiana after the Pentagon, after your time in Washington, and did what before you got into the FIBA?
Yeah, it's interesting. I crossed paths a lot with Mitch Daniels, and he was the governor at the time. And anytime I would go home to see my family, Mitch would always say, "Don't forget to come home. Like you got to come home at some point. You can't stay in D.C. Come home and help us out." So. Well, one morning my husband and I decided it was time to move home to be with family. We'd been here 20 years. We went and met with Governor Daniels, and he said, I want to start this university. It's WGU, Western Governors University. It's our country's online university. and I want to start it for Indiana and make it our own online university. And would you be the chancellor? And so I didn't know much about the actual position, but I knew that education mattered. And as a teacher, and benefited from my education, I thought, what if I put my hand to helping adults find a next path for themselves through education? So I started WGU Indiana, and it was, we had 200 students, and it was a startup mentality of building a new brand and meaning and connection. My goal was to get students in all 92 counties of Indiana. Our state researcher met with me, and she's like, Allison, you got to tone down that goal. I've heard that before.
Take it to the hoop, right?
I know, right? She's like, we have Ohio County is one of the smallest counties in the country. You'll never get a student there. Every month I would get my map, and just finally, Ohio County had a student. So I got my team together, and I said, what else is missing? They said Newton County, so I cold called Newton County. Some woman answered. I said, I'm calling on behalf of the chancellor of WG. I didn't tell her I was the chancellor. I felt like that was kind of awkward.
We can't get her on the phone, but I'm on behalf of the chancellor.
Yeah, she's a really good staffer. I'm like, could we come up and talk to you about our university? And she said, well, our chamber meets on Thursdays. Could she come Thursday? And I said, when? She said, the day after tomorrow. I said, oh yeah, I'm sure she'll be there. So I got in my car, I drove to Newton County. I spoke to all 12 people at the chamber. Some woman at the end said, well, can I enroll? And I couldn't believe it. It's like, we did it. Newton County was the last county. So I'm trying to be calm and cool. I said, well, if you think it's the right fit for you, if you think there's a, and then I went in the bathroom and I was like giving myself the Oprah speech, like, you had a goal, you took it to the hoop.
You got this, girl.
You got this, girl. Yeah, and then I came out and my executive was with me. She goes, I have bad news. She actually lives in Illinois, so it doesn't count. She works in Newton County. But she loved it so much and told her friends we got a student. And I only remember it was Newton County because then I bought Fig Newtons for everybody on my staff to celebrate.
Good branding.
We got it in 92 counties. Yeah, so I did that for 6 years.
So distance learning, basically.
It is,
right?
online education.
And so then it went, so 92 counties in Indiana.
17,000 graduates.
Yeah, that's amazing.
All stay in the state. Bachelor's and master's degrees.
Well done.
It had a lot of meaning. Yeah.
And so how long did you do that? So
I did that for about 6.5, then started the foundation. So I was there 8 years.
Yeah.
And then on a Friday morning, I got a phone call. And my caller ID showed me that it was the CEO of Pacer Sports and Entertainment. And when I saw it was, and I knew him, I was friends with his wife, I knew Rick. But when I saw it was his number on a Friday morning, I thought, uh-oh, he does not have enough people at his table at the economic club lunch. And he's got too many interns and the client. And I looked immediately and I was in a suit and I thought, oh great, I can go sit at his table, it's fine. I answered the phone and he said, Allison, how about coming to talk to me about being the president of the Fever? And I laughed out loud. I mean, I just never saw it coming. And I was a fan of the game. I'd been to the games, but it just wasn't really in my pathway. And I said, oh, Rick, this is a terrible time. I'm starting a new initiative at the university. I could never do it. And, oh, just come talk to me. And I said, I'll talk to you. I love what you're doing for women in the city and state. But I just want you to know the timing is not right, Rick. And I just don't think it will work. He goes, okay, come talk to me. I hang up, I call my husband, I'm like, you are not gonna believe the call I just got. Rick asked me about being the president of the Fever. My husband said, what do you think? I said, oh, I'm doing it.
That's a perfect time.
I just needed to negotiate my deal, It's like I didn't want him to know I was doing it.
So this is 2018, 19?
19, yes.
And when you became the president, what was the team's record the year you became the president? Do you remember?
They had won 13 games. Yeah, so it wasn't great. They hadn't made the playoffs since 2016. So really the pitch to me was, could you come work as the president, rebuild the brand, try to keep the franchise relevant while underneath the team starts rebuilding. Yeah. So I'd never been in sports. I did not actually understand how difficult that underneath piece was and how little influence I would have on that. I would have taken it anyway. It's been a great run. Yeah. I mean, that's easy to say now because it's a great run. There were some dark years.
But when you took over, and again, going back to some of the press I saw at the time, it said it's time for Fever 2.0.
Yeah.
This is like at a time when they've won 13 games, haven't been to the playoffs in 3 years. What were you thinking about at that point, other than, I don't know what the hell this is, but we're going to do 2.0 because it's going to be better than 1.0?
Well, I just felt like I learned a lot when I went into the job, and at my press conference, I said there too, oh, let's get fans in all 92 counties. We're the only female professional team in Indiana. And afterwards, somebody came up to me and said, well, you don't sell tickets in all 92 counties. And I said, well, not yet. You have to build awareness. And so I jumped on the road. I put on our Freddie Fever mascot, and people didn't know I was the president. I just showed up in the mascot to try to build awareness and for the brand, because you can't sell a ticket if you don't have awareness. So we just started that model of let's start the conversation, build the momentum. But people in sports, Sheila, you'll know this too, that they believe things. There's so much passion that sometimes overrides data. And so that's my first time in that type of a career where the data doesn't drive, passion sometimes drives. So people will, would say to me, well, Allison, you'll have fans. People in the company are like, Allison, you're ahead of your time. You're ahead of your time. You'll have fans when you start winning. And I said, well, I disagree with that. I'm a Cubs fan. Like, I'm a Cubs fan because I believe in what the Cubs stand for and the culture of that. And if we could create a culture and give people something to believe in, we will build fandom. And we actually, even in losing seasons, our fans started increasing because we were giving them something to believe in. And so, my third year, we won 6 games. It was terrible. I mean, we went through 4 coaches, 3 general managers, all new players. It was hard. We won 6 games. And my second season, and I am a devout optimist with no apology. And I traveled the state. I said, good news, there's nowhere to go but up. We only won 6 games, but we're going to be better. There is no way to go but up. And the next season, we won 5 games.
Yeah. And so you, at that time, were you playing in Cambridge? Was it the same? So you're playing in an arena with 17,000 capacity.
Yes.
And what was it?
And we would have between 2,000 and 3,000 fans.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hard.
Yeah.
And we moved around to different locations during a rebuild. So it was just, you feel the pain, right? I mean, and what's happening too is people were saying, oh, you should pay your players more. You should pay your female athletes should make more money. And casually and as respectfully as I would say, well, have you bought a ticket? Because we're a business. And so if we don't sell tickets, we don't have the money and revenue. And do you watch the games on television? And it's a partnership with fans that you have to be able to, and to have money to pay players more. And now we're starting to have that trajectory.
Well, talk a little bit about that. So you basically, you were there, and so it's scarcity to abundance. Susan and I were talking about this very concept and how you've managed, so now it's obviously a very different, Mary, somebody was saying that a 100-level seat tonight is $400.
Right.
Probably wasn't the case when you were here, when the Fever came to Mystic a few years ago.
My family used to they come to all my games, and we used to sit on the floor. And I told my sister, my cousins are here today, so they know that Lori would not love this. I said to my sister, oh, we're not sitting on the floor seats anymore. She said,
What's the deal? Yeah.
She goes, how'd you give away my ticket? I said, Lori, I've worked 5 years for somebody to want to buy that ticket. You should be happy. And then I said, and you could buy it. And she goes, no, I'll sit wherever you're sitting.
But that has an impact on salaries for the players. It has an impact. We already talked about the travel and everything like that. How do you think about now as the sort of chief operating officer? This is a very different environment, and how do you build for the future and make that last, sustain that?
Yeah, when Caitlyn decided, April 19th, 4/21, when she decided 4/21 in the afternoon, when she said she was going pro, everything changed for us. But we had already shifted our focus, because we had Aaliyah Boston from South Carolina, our first pick the previous year. If you don't spend a lot of time in sports, you have to be really bad to get 2 first pick rounds back to back.
And the second round, number 2.
Thanks for reminding me of that too.
So you had a number 2, a number 1, and number 1. I just want to kiss up the
thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes.
I'm here for you. Legacy of losing.
Legacy of losing. Mm-hmm. That's right. So, we started to see some momentum with Aaliyah.
Yeah.
And also the college game was getting more attention.
Yeah.
And so all of these things connect. But when Caitlyn came out, I made 2 phone calls, one to a former governor and one to a tech CEO. Because I said to our owner, Herb Simon, he's a billionaire with all these companies. I said, Herb, have you ever experienced a moment in a company where it changed like this overnight? And he said, no. So I thought, well, if I'm going to strategize this, I better go talk to some people who could say yes to that. Yeah. And so I met with a tech CEO, and I said, I feel like I've been writing code in my basement for 5 years, and my IPO just hit. And so he spent an hour with me thinking about how do you change your mindset to go in, and it is that scarcity. He said, when we were starting our tech company, we saved paper clips, like we were scrappy. And I thought, yes, I traveled the state in our mascot, like that's scrappy. And he said, and then we sold for billions of dollars, and now how do you reshape that? So I immediately you built out some new members of our team that didn't have the legacy of how it used to be, and so we needed to hire security, folks to travel with us. We had to hire some additional trainers, and somebody said, well, now you're going to have a massage therapist travel with you. And I said, just one? Like, do we need 3? Let's get 3. Like this, but it's that mindset of saying, and so meeting with people outside of the sport industry was really instructive to say, this is how you reimagine your momentum. And the former governor said, Allison, slow down. You got to do first things first. Caitlyn has to put a ball through the hoop before you can think about this, but be ready. And I just remember Secretary Rumsfeld, we'd be working on something, and you'd work so hard on a freedom walk or some big event, and you're getting ready to walk out of his office with him to that event, and you've put so much energy into it, and his last words to you before you step out on stage was, don't screw it up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Whatever you
Very
do, don't
so,
screw it up. Like, thank you for the inspiration, sir.
Thanks for that pep
Not like,
talk.
you got it, Allison, you've worked so hard. We're sure this is gonna be wonderful. Just don't screw it up. So that first season with this momentum, my goal was to not screw it up, but I immediately wrote a strategy about how do you build on the momentum.
Right.
Because I think we owe that to the fans and the girls and the women and the future players to say, we can't let this slip. When the WNBA started, all the arenas were sold out. I mean, they had big crowds when it started 9 years ago, and then it slipped away for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
So how do we maximize this moment is really our
but so
goal.
you talked about that with the military, this inflection point,
Yes.
and you think that this is, for the sport, an inflection point?
I think it's an inflection point for girls and women's sports. So what we're watching is that the attention is rising, not just for basketball, although that is the driver for sure. But now we have a new women's volleyball, professional volleyball league, and the
Kim,
soccer.
right, with
Yes,
soccer.
yes. So we're watching it happen. But what's happening with basketball, it's unprecedented. If you'll be at the game tonight, it's breathtaking. We were at a game, and a team in Atlanta has their own facility arena, and they used their NBA arena when we came to town because they could sell it out. And since this is off the record, here's all you need to know about Caitlyn Clark. When we would go to away games, they always sold out. Unbelievable. So Atlanta would normally have 3,000, 4,000 people. Now they have 17,000 people, and they sold 1,000 standing room only tickets. So when we walked into the arena, people were on that third balcony looking down at the tops of our players' heads to watch. I mean, it's really hard to take in. After a few away games and all of the sellouts, Caitlyn asked the WNBA if they would pay spot bonuses to the away team players. She said,
wow.
we're making all this new revenue, and I would like the away team to benefit from that. Could they get a spot bonus? So that's the heart of Caitlyn Clark. I mean, that's a classy, amazing person.
So, but it's absolutely.
The answer was no, by the way, because
Yeah,
it's
I
a
was gonna say,
collective
so did they do
bargaining
that?
agreement, and the Players Association couldn't do
But
it.
it is a little bit like the Michael Jordan effect, right? So, in other words, this has changed, to some degree, changing the economics of the sport in a really remarkable way.
The people at Nike told me that the thing that Caitlyn has done is also similar to what Tiger did, in that they brought new fans to the sport.
Right.
So Michael Jordan energized and became a role model for all the kids. Caitlyn's got that. She's brought new fans to it. But she's even more than that, in that she's 22. So she came right out of college and hit, very successful. Our start to our season was tough. I got emails all the time from people. You should fire your coach. You should fire your GM. You should, because we were on the road playing the best teams. It was really hard. And then one day I got an email from a fan that said, you should be fired.
Who's going to do that?
No, I printed it. I'm like, oh my God, they think I'm relevant. Like, this is awesome. It's in my folder at home. I have a humility folder. It's right in there. I'm
Eternal
like,
optimist.
That's right.
I like that. So, but you talked about actually the season. So there was a little bit of noise around the Olympics.
Yeah.
And the team and Caitlyn, but did that really? Maybe that helped, right? So I think you guys are 9-4 since the Olympics. Did that make a difference?
I think it did. There were, it was the book Tuesdays with Morrie talks about the tension of opposites and how really that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So we did have this tension between the league and the American fans that wanted to see Caitlyn at the Olympics, from the veterans who have been at the Olympics and the Olympic Committee that, thought that the veterans should play. I'm glad they won the gold medal for lots of reasons. It's the longest running gold medal 10-year track of any Olympic sport. It's amazing.
11,
I'm glad they won because it took away the narrative like they should have taken Caitlyn. But it was good for Caitlyn and my team because Caitlyn got a break. So she came right out of college. So the path for the WNBA is you come out of college, you finish your tournament, you're drafted in April, you're at training camp. So you're out of college, training camp, you're on the road playing in May. So there was no downtime. The Olympics was really a good time for her to rest, rebuild, and for our team to have some time together that wasn't on the road playing, this aggressive schedule. So. Yeah. And, if Caitlyn is healthy in 4 years, she'll be our Olympian with a lot of other really wonderful players. And I think that's Caitlyn, God love her, in the beginning of our season, sometimes we wish she would pass less and shoot more. She's an amazing passer, a wonderful shooter, but what she was building was team camaraderie of passing the ball, helping other people play a better game, and sometimes to the detriment of our own scores. And now we've figured that rhythm out.
Yeah, there was a lot of sort of, and we all have had to deal with the press in one way, shape, or form, so we get that they want the story. Mm-hmm. But one of the storylines was this tension on the team and everything like that. And you do have have a rookie of the year, you have two number one draft picks. It sounds like there's less there than you
That's
might
right.
think.
It's good for the media to build all of that up. But my coach, our big fan of our head coach, Christy Sides, she's really controlled the locker room, and that's what it comes to in sports is who can control the locker room. And when I got this job, I wrote a strategy, my 3 C's to build a championship culture: commit, compete, and contribute will give us a championship culture. I didn't know if it would get us
ultimately 5 C's.
I know, but I didn't know about that part.
Okay,
last part.
I got it. That's the.
So you're good at math.
I was in the Navy.
I know.
Yeah.
So I thought if we could commit every day, all of us, to be the best person we could be. And in sports it was interesting. The front office, all the people were a little bit willing to accept a double standard. They wanted the players to perform at the highest level, but they didn't expect that of themselves.
Yeah.
Like, well, we'll sell more tickets when they win. It's like, this is not the right culture. So we had to change some folks. Commit to be the best person. Compete for what? Goodwill, partners, sponsors, all of the things, wins, but we couldn't control that. And then contribute, how do we get back into the community? So this framework seemed to make a lot of sense. So we painted it on the locker room wall. When you walked in, there were these big words: commit, compete, and contribute. And as a corporate kind of, what's your mission statement or your values or
Chairman
your vision,
mission statement,
all the things, yeah. So we'd walk in and we saw it every day, and I thought it looked so great. And then I hired Lynn Dunn, our general manager, and she came in first day, had those painted over. I'm like, it's shocking. I'm like, she goes, listen, we still believe in those 3 C's, whatever they are, but we're putting pictures of players on this wall. It's a locker room. And I was like, there were moments of that where I thought, I'm probably not the right fit in sports. Or my first week on the job, Pacers made it to playoffs, and they passed out these shirts. They ordered 16,000 gold shirts, and it said, gold, don't quit. And I went to the marketing person. I'm like, I'm sorry to tell you, I know you ordered 16,000 shirts, but there's a typo on your shirt. I said, it's gold. You have 2 options. It's either gold doesn't quit or gold, comma, don't quit. And she looked at me and she's like, why are you in sports? Like, I'm like,
you really don't get this thing,
no, you sure
do you?
don't. Like, well, it's not gold, don't quit. I took my shirt home and took a Sharpie and put a comma. I'm like, I am not wearing a shirt that says gold, don't quit. Like,
that's your teacher coming
It
up.
is, yeah. It hasn't all been smooth.
How about NIL? So as a team sort of front office, what do you think about that? And is it changing the sport, and how? And is it good?
I'm a big fan of NIL. It's complicated, like every good new thing is. So much of that was happening anyway without really protecting the players and their opportunity. But my favorite part, Larry, is the women who are coming out with these NIL deals, and they are significant and they're deserved. They deserve them. They're coming out now of college as business women. So some of our rookies, not just Caitlyn, the rookies go to the league, they get drafted, the league puts contracts in front of them. You've probably heard this story, Sheila. The Players Association gives them a contract to sign. And they said, well, you have to sign this contract. And the players said, well, okay, we'll have our lawyers look at it. And the Players Association was like, no, you have to sign this if you want to play in the W. And these college graduates said, well, we'll sign it, but we need our lawyer to look at it. The league wasn't that happy about it. I loved it. Because through the NIL, these women are learning to be entrepreneurs and protect their own image and their right and negotiate for what they need. And so I think it's terrific.
Yeah.
And the college NIL deals now typically convert and they come with the player to become a sponsorship deal of the player. And so they're continue making that income.
And do you see in Indiana, have you had a chance to see how that's going? In other words, do you see the business community stepping up?
We do, yeah, we do. And we're very fortunate. I mean, I just kind of accept the Caitlyn moment with a lot of humility, because it's just, you know, you have to lose a lot to be here, and then you just have to be, you know, in the right place at the right time. So it's, we hold it very, you know, gently that we're fortunate to have this moment. But what happened is we've spent 5 years calling companies, trying to get them to be a partner. And that inflection moment happens, and people are calling us saying, how can we get on your jersey patch? And so it's, you know, I've had the 5 years of that not being the case. You know, my sponsorship people would sell a fever deal for $5,000. And I said to them, I don't even get out of bed for $5,000. Like, what are we doing here? Like, don't devalue the product. And they said, yeah, but people don't want to support it. I said, because you're teaching them they don't have to. And so we had some growth to do that got us ready for this moment. Yeah. But you know, that's, you know, Caitlyn makes me look smarter, more strategic, all the things. Like all of a sudden,
yeah,
it's like, wow.
I would say, and she even makes it. Is that still? Can we still do this? I just want to. I don't know if that's still on, because I got a picture of Allison taking a great shot. Because I think Caitlyn actually made you a better shooter too.
Did she?
Yeah, we got a great picture of you taking a shot.
I don't know. I don't even know what that is. Oh yeah.
That's you actually great form there.
Yeah, thank you.
Off the ground a little bit.
You know, that's both my worlds colliding. 20 years in D.C.
That's what I say.
and
At the White House, that's everything.
That's right.
What is that? Do you remember?
I do remember. It's the Easter egg. It's an Easter egg roll, and they wanted to highlight all of sports, and they didn't have anybody that could make it from women's basketball. And I got a call from the First Lady's office from a woman, Colby, who works there. She goes, you might not remember me, but I was an intern at the Indiana Motor Speedway years ago, and you were nice enough to take me to coffee to help me think about my career.
Oh my God.
She said, we need somebody from basketball, and I happened to have a player, because it was April, so we were in training season. I had a player who was on injured reserve, so she and I jumped on a plane and we came and shot hoops for the. Yeah, thanks. That's, you know, I didn't get signed after that. Sadly.
I know, but they probably saw you spinning the ball and said, "This is our girl." So we're going to get to your questions. So please do have questions if you want. I do want to ask you. So it's been announced that you've got your 9th career, maybe, I don't know. But tell us a little bit about your next journey.
Thank you. Yeah, 3 weeks ago, a group of folks who've been working for 3 years to create a brand new project came to me and asked me, shared with me the vision of this project, and it seems like it's worth doing. So at the end of our season, which I hope is deep into the playoffs, I will transition to create the country's first girls sport and leadership complex, and never been done. It will be all the sports. It will be focused just on girls, 12th grade and under, to help them develop. It will have a health and wellness center, training facilities, soccer, football, flag football, basketball, volleyball, golf. Billie Jean King is involved in this as well. So this really is, at 4 o'clock today, the press announcement will go out. So it's really brand new. But we just feel like it's a little bit to that. You know, I was writing the strategy, how do you build the momentum? I didn't know about this opportunity, but this is exactly what I was thinking about, is how do we take the spirit and the energy of the Caitlyn Clarks and the players across the WNBA who say, we want to provide more for girls. And what do we know about, I look at research, you know, it's a little bit of my education background, probably 5 million kids in America are dealing with depression. Now, many more with other mental health issues, but depression, 5 million kids. The Cleveland Clinic said the best thing you can do to mitigate depression is physical activity. And so I look at that and say, well, why won't we do more? You know, when I got this job, my first week on the job, my director of marketing said, oh, we're going to have a Papa shot out at the fair and people can come and we're going to give out hand sanitizer. And I said, don't give out hand sanitizer. Please don't give out hand sanitizer. I said, our job is to help kids get their hands dirty. No. And my director of marketing said, well, but after they get their hands dirty, they need to clean them. I'm like, oh, so you already paid for the hand sanitizer? Yes, is the answer. We gave out hand sanitizer because it was like, well, it already has our logo on there. So we're going to start, and the project's called the Marvella Project. Senator Birch Bayh from Indiana wrote Title IX, sponsored it, and with the help of a lot of women who were fighting hard for it, to include his wife Marvella, who was denied college entrance because she couldn't get financial aid. So Marvella Bayh was the inspiration for Birch writing Title IX. So we're naming the project, this whole complex, in her memory. So it's the Marvella project. We'll build one in Indiana. We have 100 acres. It's between Indiana and Chicago. The goal will be to create that in Indiana, and then we'll build 4 more around the country of saying just, this is how you take advantage of this moment to make it a movement, is you really double down and say sports brings people together.
That's right.
And we joke a lot about that, is when there's a great shot, you high-five the person next to you and you don't ask them who they voted for before you high-five them. It's just, there's something special about sports. So we want to do more.
That's nice. That's fantastic. The vision is brilliant. But this is a year-round facility so the kids will come for weekends, for a week. How does that, what's the model?
We'll build it out it'll have clinics, conferences, leadership seminars for girls. So it will be a year-round facility, and then we'll plug and play weekend tournaments and then other activities for families when they come with their girls.
That's wonderful.
Thanks.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
well,
thanks.
congratulations.
Well, thanks.
That's
We're just
very
$98 million short of being done.
Yeah. So we're passing the hat after
Yeah,
this.
that's right.
Anyway,
Will
I
you
want
sell
to
your
see if
shirt?
there's anybody from the club that has any questions. I left a lot on the table when it comes to the fever for Caitlyn or anything else. Any questions from the team? Yeah, Kim, please.
So thank you. This has been really lovely. Clearly, there's a thread with you through all the different. Thank you. Clearly, there's a thread with you that is great leadership. So I would love to hear just your philosophy on leadership and things that, you've been inspiring and you've done such amazing work. I'd love to understand, what is that common thread? What is it that you use to inspire your staff everywhere you go?
Thank you for the question. Years ago, there was this movement around writing it was in Tuesdays with Morrie, write your eulogy. And so a lot of years ago, I wrote my eulogy, and I thought, if I could figure out what I want somebody to say about me when I die, then that'll teach me how to live. And I landed on this word of contribution. And I think that is really, it's probably the school teacher in me. My great-grandparents were immigrants from the Middle East to Gary, Indiana. They just, they made a path. And when you come from that beginning and you realize that people give you opportunity and it's your job to give it back, then contribution has really driven every decision I've made in the careers that I've chosen, and that really probably influences my leadership style of how can I help you develop and become the best version of yourself, to me is really my job as a leader. And so, sometimes that's easy. It's really easy to lead people who are built like you and work and think like you. It's challenging to help people grow and develop when they're not like you, but as a leader, that's your job. And don't paint your vision statement on a locker room wall like that, I learned.
Yeah. Pictures, please.
Yes.
Dr. Barber, thank you very much for your comments. I'm the Iowan who can't shoot a logo 3. But both for your new role and in your role at the Fever, from your perspective, where do you see the trajectory of women's sports going? How do you build on this moment, from elementary school, through high school, through college, through pro? Where do you see things going?
I think the future is very bright. The WNBA just inked a $2.2 billion media deal. It's 6x more than any media deal they've had. There is something about being able to see sports for girls to continue to want to be in that space. It's really true for all of us in our careers. You do it, you're mentors. I know you are. I know how this town works. You show the path to other people. If they can see it, they can be it. That's real. It's true in sports. So having a $2.2 billion media deal, we just announced we announced that publicly, right? Mm-hmm. So 3 now. So we have 3 new WNBA teams. That kind of momentum matters. And if you look at the past of sports, you have to have good rivalry, you have to have teams in the right cities, and you have to have the media deal. I think it will continue. But what we have now that we didn't have back when the NBA started and years ago with Title IX, what we do now have is social media. So with the Fever, I just got a report, we just hit 1 billion views of digital content. Now we've only played 36 games. So this is, since May, 1 billion views of digital content on our digital content. Compare that to the Pacers, who are great, and they had a good run deep into the playoffs. They broke their own record with 483 million views. We're at 1 billion. Yeah. We've had a 1,193% increase in jersey sales. We've had 36 of our games on national TV. Last year we had 1. So these things, my mascot, not with me in it, thankfully, but my mascot's invitations to appear have gone up 150% for the mascot, not with a player, just the mascot. These are signals to me that the momentum is going to continue to grow, and it's good.
You talked about the expansion. Thanks a lot for the question. You talked about the expansion, so 15 teams now, plus or minus, right? How do you think? What's the thinking on that? I mean,
We'll get to 16.
Yeah.
We'll go one more, and we'll get to 16 and hold there.
Yeah.
Is the plan.
And how? So the model has been for the players, basically in the off season, go overseas and play. But that sounds like that's starting to change a little bit too. The compensation for the players is.
That's right, Larry. So Kathy Engelbert, our commissioner, I know she's been here too. She created a team marketing agreement so we can actually put players on marketing agreements. They don't have to go overseas. Usually they go overseas to make more money in the off season. So now physically that's hard. They're playing 12 months out of the year. I mean, it's just the average player in the WNBA is there 4 years. So the 4 years, that's it for their career, which is why David Stern said they have to have college degrees, because he didn't think this would be a long-term career, and that's true. It wasn't. It could be, but not yet. So they now don't have to go overseas because they can get a marketing agreement. And then with this new media deal, we'll be able to, we're going into collective bargaining, so then it remains to be seen what the players want to negotiate as it relates to salaries. But we now have resources that we can come to the table and have thoughtful and good conversations that will help that.
Other questions from please. Wait for the mic.
That plays travel basketball, and you cannot underestimate the effect that this has on her. She thinks this is normal, because since she has been so I want to thank you. And the thing about this is most amazing, by the way, she wanted me to bring Caitlyn's jersey to you, have her, you get her to sign it, and she's going to go to the game today. Sorry, Sheila, but in an Indiana Fevers jersey. She said, I'll just pick it up at the game when I go. That was her idea. But the thing about Caitlyn Clark that's the most amazing to me is she always seems to say the right thing. Like, she never lashes out in anger. And she's not a saint on the court, right? I mean, she's tough. And to me, that's something that all of our athletes can learn, right? In the NBA, in the WNBA, in the NFL. And how do you get that, spread that word? Like, how can you teach everyone that rising tide, that lifts all ships?
Yeah.
And that's my thought.
This is where I will tell you, Caitlyn is one of one. I've met and worked with a lot of great people. I don't know anybody like Caitlyn in that she's 22, she's a multimillionaire, she's carrying the burden and the weight of this pressure on her shoulders, and is, great with the media. I mean, and knows how to handle each situation really well. I sent her a note one day and I said, the best part of taking the high road, Caitlyn, is there's no traffic. And I think she just demonstrates that. And I think people will be inspired by that. They'll take it on if they choose to. They'll learn from it. But she's very unique. And so I'm not sure just anybody could learn that, because it's really part of her family upbringing, her Iowa roots, her coaches. They've built this into Caitlyn that she's, we accept this in every other area. If you're going for a surgery, open heart surgery, you're going to go to the best specialist in the world, right? Every other area, we accept that there are specialists that are unlike anyone else. And that's true about Caitlyn.
Yeah. Please.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. I am a AAU, former AAU mom, and a huge fan. I'm a Mystics fan. And we'll definitely be at the game tonight.
Great.
And having sat in those arenas for years, I'm curious to know statistically, how has the demographic of the attendees and ticket holders changed?
I was so thrilled. We have great fans in the WNBA, true. My fans, somebody said to me, I'm so thrilled with this new crowd, because when we became season ticket holders, everybody in the arena looked just like us. And now they don't. At my game on Sunday, our camera folks found a man sitting there holding up a sign, feebly, because it says, "Today is my 90th birthday."
Oh my, wow.
And I wanted to see Caitlyn Clark play for my birthday.
Wow.
90.
Wow.
And then we have people with infants with headphones on to protect their hearing. And it's everything in between. I was telling Susan, I was in Northwest Indiana, a small town in Indiana. I stop for some chicken rice soup, lemon rice soup, because it's the best at this Greek restaurant. And the owner of the restaurant sees my F logo on my shirt, and he goes, "Oh, have you ever been to a Fever game?" And I was dumbfounded. I couldn't
Took out the
answer.
mascot costume, put it on.
He wants some tickets, $400 balcony. I couldn't believe that he, in the small town of Indiana, recognized the F because it's in the Chicago market, so they know Chicago, they wouldn't know Indy team. I said, "Oh, yes." I said, "Actually, I do get to go to the games," interestingly enough. So we chatted. I told him I was the president. I go to my car. He follows me out with his phone. He said, "Would you say hi to my father? He's a big fan." And he turns his phone around. Now I'm FaceTiming with this man. His dad, he's like, "This is the president of the Fever." And okay. And he said, the father says, "I love your games. I watch all of them. I have to stay up till 5 in the morning to watch your games." I said, "Why? Where are you?" He goes, "Oh, I live in Greece."
Oh my God, that's remarkable.
So this, the demographics it's global for sure, and it's good for all of us. My opening game was in Connecticut. It was a sellout. Lots of people wearing the blue T-shirt because for the first time in the history of Dick's Sporting Good, they carry a shirt with a name and number for one player in all of their stores. So everywhere I go, I see Caitlyn Clark T-shirts from Dick's. But we lost that first game, and as a business person, I was okay with that because what happened is Caitlyn drew new fans to the Connecticut arena that had never seen a W game. And so I was happy that they knew and their team won because it builds momentum for that team.
That's fantastic.
I mean, I would not tell my coach that. So if you see my coach, don't tell her that.
As noted, we're 100% off the record
Yes,
here.
exactly.
Other questions for Allison? Any questions? So your teacher background, the average age of the average tenure on your team is 3 years.
Right.
And the Aces, just to compare, is 6 years.
Yes.
So does that youth difference matter? I mean, it matters obviously because they're younger and more maybe better players. I don't know, but
yeah, I think you can apply these to your careers. You think about when you were in your first job and you're so excited that you got your PowerPoint presentation put together for your boss, who got to brief the boss, who briefed the boss, and you feel good about it. But and then in a few more years, you are the boss. So there comes this confidence, the competencies, also this emotional levelness of the players. You win some games, you lose some games, that's how it goes. And you don't, Don Staley, the coach from South Carolina, says it all the time, don't let your highs get too highs, your lows get too lows. But when we all started in our career, everything was high because we're anxious, you're nervous,
excited,
and you don't have a lot to draw from.
Yeah.
I do think that the teams that have these seasoned players, you kind of expect that they're going to pull, even if they're down, you kind of expect they're going to win because they know how to win. When I got this job, I did a quick research about the teams that had won championships, and every team in the history of the W who won a championship, they either had an all-star or an Olympian, at least one on every team that won a championship. So I immediately looked at my roster. I had 0.
Yeah.
And for several years, I had 0. And so there's a reason for that there comes the skill set and ability to win, and they know how to win.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know we're getting close to the bottom of the hour. I do want to thank Mary and the club. Sheila, wonderful to see you. And Gina, thanks so much. It's Allison, congratulations. You've had an amazing ride. We're looking very much forward to hearing about your next success.
Thank you.
It is exciting I will just put another plug in for the club because everybody in this room right now is 1 degree of separation from the President of the United States and from Caitlyn Clark. So that's not bad, Economic Club of DC. But thank you very much.